Hey Gear Seekers, I'm Nick. What if I told you that one of Phanteks' most iconic K series, the P400 series, actually got a kind of new version in the G360A? And what if I told you that everything that the P400 series didn't do, this one does in the same size? Today we're going to take a bit of a look at the brand new Phanteks Eclipse G360A. It's a budget focus case, and I say that very lightly. That has 3 included addressable RGB fans and has lots of cooling potential. Let's take a closer look. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take a closer look at this case. We're gonna test all the thermals, we're gonna do all that stuff, so stay tuned. But first of all, let's see how to get into it. Not let's get into it, let's see how we get into it. Let's start off with panel removal. Start with the tempered glass side panel. There is no tint here. It is as clear as day. It's got captive thumb screws that hold the panel in. Basically all you do is loosen them up with your thumbs, because they're thumb screws, slide it out, and away we go. Rear panel's the same deal. Captive thumb screws, pull the back panel off with a bit of jiggling, and away we go. Front panel removal, same deal. Just grab the bottom and yank it. The top panel can also be completely removed as well, but we're not going to do that. But basically, if you really wanted to, everything is attached with screws and no rivets. So you could remove these top screws. There's about 10 of them, and you could pop off the whole top if you wanted to. You probably won't need to do that, but you can do it as an option. Front panel design here is pretty similar to what we saw with the P500A in terms of density between the holes and the pattern itself and the embossing and whatnot. So it does have a fully mesh front panel, and this is the only option for this case. I like that this is the only option because airflow is life. For SSD and hard disk support, you've got 3 SSD sled mounts here, which basically you just mount the drive to and you can pop them on. And there's 2 other drive sleds in the basement here for 2.5-inch SSDs, 3.5-inch spinning rush drives, and whatever you like. So you can have up to 5 drives in this case if you really want. For power supply support, we've got a maximum of 220 mils in the stock configuration, just depending on this hard disk cage. If you remove it, probably up to, I would say, 280 millimeters maximum. Otherwise, it's just not going to fit in this case. It's not a huge case, but it's also not a very small case either. On the G360A, there's 3 pre-installed digital RGB fans. They're 120mm fans. They're actually PWM. They're not just DC powered like we've seen in other Phanteks cases, which means chances are they're going to be a lot quieter and they'll give us a lot more control over the fan RPM. Not only that, these fans can be daisy chained with RGB as well, and they use the RGB connectors that we typically see on stuff from Deepcool, Lian, and Phanteks, and a bunch of other companies as well. Actually, this whole front bracket where the fans are mounted can be removed because in terms of fan and radiator support, you can do up to a 360mm liquid cooler up the front or a 360mm radiator, depending on the configuration you're going for. And it's all attached with these screws here. The way this works is you just lift up the bracket and then the fans will come out. Obviously the cables are still installed here. You can see that this whole front bracket is removable, which means if you're wanting to install a liquid cooler, you can install it on this bracket outside of the case. At the top, we can do a 360mm radiator as well, or 2 140mm fans, or 3 120mm fans as well. So already looking a lot better than the P400A. Then on the rear, we've got support for up to a 120mm fan. For motherboard support, we're looking from ITX all the way up to EATX with a maximum width of 280mm. So quite versatile in terms of motherboards that you can install in this case. I know a lot of you ask about air cooler support for these cases as well. So the maximum air cooler height you're looking at is 162mm. Maximum GPU length, you're looking at 400mm. There's a lot of clearance in this case, and I've got a STRIX RTX 3080, so you can take a bit of a look. We've got a lot of clearance here. Here's just a little bit of the ye old STRIX test so you guys can get a bit of a look at it. Lots and lots of room for activities in this case. If we rotate the case around to the back, you can see that there's no support bracing here, which means you can use a vertical GPU bracket of your choosing if you wanted to vertically mount your GPU in this case. There's two primary dust filters. There's the magnetic fan filter that's on the top of the case, as well as the standard power supply dust filter, which slides into the bottom as well. In terms of connectivity for the case, there's not heaps going on here. So you've got your USB 3.2 connection for the USB ports on the top, you've got your front panel audio header, and you've got your power switch, as well as an addressable RGB connection for the header on your motherboard for controlling everything with your motherboard's RGB software. However, like most other Phanteks cases, it has a built-in RGB controller where you can press the buttons and change through colors and modes and anything that you like, basically. While we're up here, we'll take a look at the front I/O, or the top I/O rather. We've got two USB Type A ports and a combined headphone and microphone jack. The power button though is actually attached to this front PCB here with this little button. When the front panel's on, obviously it looks a lot nicer, but you know, that's where it is. As mentioned previously, this case does have an integrated RGB controller. However, you will need to use SATA power to make it work. So there's also an integrated RGB strip along the edge of the top of the basement for the power supply. For cable management, we've got this cable management raceway here with Velcro to hold everything towards the back of the motherboard tray, although this technically isn't a motherboard tray. There's also lots of little tie down points all around the back of the motherboard tray as well. It's got cable pass-throughs similar to what we saw on the P300A. In fact, I modified the P300A. I cut out these braces here just to make it wider. I think they should have done that, at least for this one up the top here, especially for those motherboards that have right-angled 24-pin power connectors. If they removed this bar here, it would make it a lot better. That's basically everything you need to know about the G360A for now. We're gonna test the thermals, do a build and all that stuff, so stick around. Let's start building. I tend to not do this mid-build, but I thought this was worth mentioning that RAM clearance with top-mounted radiators is real with this case. So I swapped out this Team Group kit that I'd planned on using for some Triton Z Royal. The top-mounted radiator clearance in this case is going to be a little bit of an issue, even with 240mm radiators, because not only did I need to remove the top of the case, which I didn't show in that part of building the PC, I actually need to remove it again to plug all the fan cables and everything in as well. So thought it was worth putting this in now before I forgot when I get to talking about this after I've done all the testing and everything. So this case I don't think is really that well designed to have top mounted radiators. I would just go with top fans, but it's too late for me. I need to crack on with the choices that I've made in my life. So let's kick on. Alright ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed this build in the Phanteks Eclipse G360A, but let's take a bit of a look at those thermals. What you're seeing on your screen right now is the thermals aren't too bad here, and you have to remember the 12900KS is a very, very hot CPU, and although we get close to 100 degrees, I think that for this case, the thermals are not too bad. It doesn't have a lot of internal volume to move air around. So yeah, I would say that the thermals here are okay, although a little on the warm side. Realistically, if it's not catching on fire, you should be okay. Alrighty, let's talk about everybody's favorite part, the parts. The CPU is the Intel Core i9 12900KS. We put the 12900KS on the Asus ROG STRIX B660A gaming Wi-Fi. And I know someone's gonna say, hey, 12900KS on a B660 board, it's fine guys. To cool the 12900KS, we use the Phanteks Glacier 1 360 MPH. The RAM is 16 gigs of Trident Z Royal at 3600 mega transfers. Now, you probably saw the part of the video where I had to change the RAM because that team group memory just didn't fit. That's the only reason why the RAM's different in this part of the video. The GPU is the Asus ROG Strix RTX 3080 Gundam Edition. We've got those very fancy Lian Strimer V2 Plus cables. You guys love them, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna use them again. All the lighting is configured in AuraSync for the GPU and the motherboard and all that stuff. Also L-Connect 3 for the cables, and the rest of the lighting with the fans and everything else is actually controlled by the internal RGB controller. I wanted to make it as easy as possible. If I missed any of the parts, I'll put a PC part picker list down below in the description. You can peruse that list at your own leisure, but let's quickly talk about the G360A. Now, in terms of build quality, it's very Phanteks, so it's basically the same as the other Eclipse cases that we've seen. In fact, it's quite similar to the P400A in terms of internal volume, cable management, and that kind of stuff. There is a little bit more cable management with the additional channel at the front of the case. However, I did run into a few problems with this case. Now, I thought this was gonna go a bit better than what actually happened. You probably saw that part in the video where I had to change the RAM, otherwise the AIO and fans would not clear the RAM or the motherboard. So you really need to take that into account if you're wanting to do a liquid cooler on the top. And this doesn't just apply to using a 360 cooler. This is any cooler that you mount in the top. Not only that, it's quite tricky to install a cooler in the top if you don't take the top panel off. The cable pass-throughs on the top above the motherboard are far too small. Now, one of the biggest complaints I had with the P400A was the fact that they could have done top radiator mounting if they moved everything over to the left-hand side of the case if you're looking at it straight on. And they kind of did that in this. However, with a tiny bit of clearance, let's say an extra centimeter at the top, it would have made better RAM clearance. It would have also allowed you to install Phanteks' own T30 fans and that AIO with the thicker radiator. It's a bit odd. I spent such a long time building in this case, way longer than I would usually build because of those little annoyances. So typically, just to give you guys a bit of perspective, a build like this would probably take me an hour because I'm like kind of taking my time in cable managing. This thing took me 2.5 hours because of all the weird little things I had to navigate when building in it. And obviously people are like, oh, but you could have done some research first, guys. This case doesn't exist as of the time of filming this video, so no.
Would it be a deal breaker?
Would it be a deal breaker? Ask me that after the next time I have to build in it.
So maybe you are having an iffy day.
No, I think let's freestyle a bit now, Claire. All right, let's freestyle. Biggest letdown is the top radiator mounting support. That's the one thing that Phanteks has missed on their smaller cases, is being able to pull that off. Other cases can pull it off in the same size. In fact, the new NZXT H7 isn't much bigger than this case, and they've managed to do it really easily. It's very close to being good. Very, very, very close. Like, it is good.
Hold up.
If you're mounting the radiator at the front, you're gonna have no problems with this case at all, okay? Right? We good. But top mounting, skip it. all the negative stuff aside, what it does have going for it is that Phanteks quality. The price is very, very good, and included addressable RGB fans just adds to the appeal of this case. Because if you're interested in this case right here, they're going for around 99 US dollars or around 139 Aussie dollars at the time of filming this video. So the price is quite competitive for what you're getting. But please, if you are building in this, do a little bit of research. You will run into very similar problems that you would find with the P400A. I did have hopes that they would address a little bit of this. If the case was a slight bit wider and a slight bit taller, I guess it would just be a whole different case altogether, but good effort, good effort. I do like this case. I think it has its place, and we'll probably end up using it as our new installer guide case. You know how we have a case that we use for all our cooler install guides? Because everything in this is relatively easy to mount if I'm doing front radiators and stuff. So yeah, and it will be quite easy to film in. But let us know what you guys think of the Phanteks Eclipse G360A. I'm a wee bit disappointed with the execution, but ultimately it's not a terrible case. And if you like the music out here, I'll make all the music available down below with the join button.
Sold.
Who's it sold to?
The humans.
The humans of Earth.